Good morning. Lively bunch today. My name is Paul, and I bring greetings from Gospel Peace Church. That's our gang sign. And it's great to be here. Saratoga Springs has a really special place in our heart. As we were considering moving from Virginia Beach, Virginia, to Utah, we actually came out here for a vision trip in 2019, which the Rollins were on too. Both of y'all were on? Yeah, that's right. And we stayed in Saratoga Springs with some friends of ours who I graduated high school with, Justin and Christina Mungie. Christina is Tim Adams' sister, if you know Tim Adam, and Dave and Linda's daughter. And our connections kind of go back. Anyways, we stayed in Saratoga Springs, and we actually came out here for a visit thinking Utah would be a pretty cool backup plan for what we already had going on. And as we were driving back here to Saratoga Springs from some stuff we were doing the vision trip, me and Abby were talking, and that's when the Lord really turned our hearts towards Utah. And so we're excited that there is a church plant, another church here in Utah, but especially in Saratoga Springs. So connected. I grew up in the town of Normal, Illinois, so I have some friends here from Normal, Illinois. And then we lived in Virginia Beach. I also have friends here from Virginia Beach, TJ and Jasmine. I didn't know TJ in Virginia Beach. He was in my fantasy football league, and he lost that year, which was fantastic. You'll have to ask him about his punishment for that, too. It was pretty great. Story for another time. But he's terrible at fantasy football, in case you're wondering. And then, where is TJ here? I can make fun of him while he's gone. That's great. Okay, perfect. Children's Church. Perfect. Okay, and then we moved out to Salt Lake City, and was that Gospel Grace Church. You guys are here too, on my word. Gospel Grace Church. We were there for a year in a church planting residency, and then planted up in Logan, Utah. And our church plant is almost 5 years old. So we're really encouraged by how things are going up there. And just so you know where we're at, just a brief update on Gospel Peace Church. We've been meeting in a community center called the Whittier Community Center, just around the corner from the LDS Temple there in Logan. And much like here, I'm going to point in the wrong direction probably. I have no idea what direction we are right now. But anyways, we've been meeting in there, and in the Lord's providence, we actually purchased a building about a year ago. If you've been up to Logan, anybody ever been to Logan, Utah before? Yes. All right, cool. There is an old church building in South Main Street. Alpine Church currently occupies it, but we bought it about a year ago. Alpine Church is building out a theater building, and it's an amazing story how we acquired this building. But we purchased it about a year ago, and then once they move out, we'll be able to move in. We hope that they move out tomorrow, but it's likely that our first Sunday will be August 2nd. That's the way we're praying. And so, less than 30 days, we'll be able to meet in our own building there in Utah, in Logan. So thanks for praying for me. I'm very thankful for the partnership that we have in the gospel here. And we drove right past Redemption. I had to, shout out to Redemption too. Just wave to you guys as we drove up to Logan. We're cooler than you or something like that. No, actually, Redemption has been an important kind of quiet ministry to us. During some really difficult times that we were facing, I was able to reach out to one of the pastors there at Redemption and offered much counsel to us as a pastoral team. So we're very thankful for partnerships in the gospel with you all too. We're going to look at the text together this morning because the grass withers and the flower falls, but the word of the Lord remains forever. Ecclesiastes 3. Do you know any nicknames that start with Mr.? What comes to mind when you think of somebody with the nickname that starts with Mr.? Did I hear Mr. Beast? Yeah, there's one. Mr. Universe. That's what people call me sometimes. Just kidding. Mr. Olympia, Mr. America. I get that one too. Mr. T. Remember him? Mr. Clean. Mr. Bean, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Wonderful. We'll playfully add Mr. to some name, like Mr. Know-It-All, Mr. Right, Mr. Clutch, Mr. Baseball, Mr. October. Remember these guys? But I wonder if you've ever heard of a guy called Mr. Eternity. Mr. Eternity. If you're from Australia, you may know who I'm talking about. I got this from a book we read as men in our church, read together, but listen to this. For over 25 years, from 1930 to 1956, the people of Sydney, Australia, woke up each day to a one-word sermon. Eternity. Handwritten in yellow crayon on footpaths, train station platforms, and perimeter walls lining the city's many walkways and streets. Each day, a fresh batch of graffiti rendered in beautiful copper plate lettering style would appear at places where there weren't any the previous night. Somehow, for over 25 years, a mysterious figure had managed to sneak into the city every night and leave his presence on the city's walls and sidewalks. It attracted the ire of Sydney City Council at first, but as the weeks became months and the months became years, the eternity graffiti became an iconic symbol of the city. Pedestrians would step around and over the words so as not to disrupt. Street cleaners and street sweepers left the elegant writings untouched. The mysterious figure behind the phenomenon, who was to become the most famous graffiti artist in Australia's history, managed to keep his identity secret until one morning, June of 1956, when he was caught in the act. That morning, Reverend Thompson, who preached at the Burton Street Baptist Church, saw a church cleaner sneak out a piece of chalk from his pocket and write the word on a footpath. Eternity. Reverend Thompson said, "Are you Mr. Eternity?" To which the cleaner replied, "Guilty, Your Honor." Soon after that encounter, the Sunday Telegraph published an interview with the artist and the mystery that had baffled Sydney for over 25 years. And it was finally revealed. The cleaner's name was Arthur Malcolm Stace. Stace had finally found his calling in 1932 when he went to listen to a Baptist preacher named John Ridley give a sermon. In the sermon entitled Echoes of Eternity, Ridley declared, "Eternity, eternity. I wish that I could sound or shout that word to everyone in the streets of Sydney. You've got to meet it," he said. "Where will you spend eternity?" Those words so captivated Arthur Malcolm Stace that at that very moment, Stace pulled out chalk that he had in his pocket. He bent down on the church floor and wrote the word eternity. Even though Stace was illiterate and could hardly write his own name, the word eternity came out smoothly in a beautiful copperplate script. He said, I couldn't understand it, and I still can't," he told the interviewer. You see, Stace knew the importance of living in light of eternity. He wanted the people of Sydney to consider eternity. In the hustle and bustle of city life in Sydney, Arthur Stace wanted people to contemplate the idea that there's something more to this life than what we see in this life. Consider eternity. We can often forget about eternity, can't we? We get so busy, so caught up in this life, in this world, things that are happening here under our sun. We can get so caught up in these things, in the here and now, that we don't live like eternity is coming. fascinating how Sidney responded. How did Sidney respond? The author writes this: how did the increasingly godless city respond to this overtly religious message? What place has eternity in its secular and religious soul, an irreligious soul? Oddly, there was plenty of room, it seems, to mark the new millennium on January 1st, 2000. It's actually a year before the new millennium, in case you're wondering. But January 1st, 2000, the word eternity, without a squeak of complaint, was emblazoned on the iconic Sydney Harbor Bridge right here. Just as Stace had written it more than a 500,000 times, they say. It was viewed, they estimated, by some 2 billion people across the world. We might have expected a more accurate message of a predominantly secular humanist society like Sydney. You might have expected it to be something like oblivion. There's nothing else besides what's on this earth. That's a little long, maybe for a bridge. This is all there is. But instead, somehow, the transcendent message of eternity struck a chord in the human hearts and around the globe. You see, God, as our text says today in verse 11, God has put eternity into man's hearts. And I wonder if Mr. Eternity has a word for us today. I wonder if we too often forget about eternity. And I want to submit to you that a focus on eternity will change your life. Not just change your eternity, but will change your life here and now. Now, everything about your life will be changed. Arthur Stace wanted to preach this sermon to every person in Sydney, and so he did. Gospel Fellowship, I want to convince you to stand in awe of God's sovereign work in light of eternity. The 2 points this morning are these: God sets the times and God gets the glory. It's that easy. God sets the times and God gets the glory. Really simple, I should say. Not very easy. God sets the times. Look at this with me. First thing, God sets the times. Look with me at verse 1. This is his thesis statement. Look at verse 1 of chapter 3. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. This is thesis. So what is he saying in his thesis statement? He's saying that as he observes the world, this is what he sees. He sees that there is time, there is a season for everything under heaven. You probably know the more common phrase used in Ecclesiastes, this phrase, under the sun. Have you heard this before? This word, under the sun. It's actually a unique Ecclesiastes phrase. It's used 29 times in the Old Testament, and every time that it's used in Ecclesiastes, by Ecclesiastes, under the sun. What is he saying there? He's saying that it's actually, that phrase, under the sun, in my opinion, really unlocks Ecclesiastes for you, because what he says is like, life under the sun is completely meaningless. And you start to wonder, really? Have you read Ecclesiastes and thought like, what is this doing in the Bible? Everything is meaningless? You've probably looked at your translation and might say something like vanity. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. Everything is vanity. Vanity of vanities. That's that word. Meaningless. It's that word of absurd. Things seem kind of like, what in the world is happening? Is everything just meaningless? Vanity? Absurd? It's actually the word there is, the Hebrew is hevel, but it means vapor. It's fleeting. It's pointless. It can't be quite grasped. There's another phrase in Ecclesiastes that says, it's like chasing after the wind. You ever chased after the wind? Don't do that. You'll look a little crazy, okay? Don't do that. You can't quite grab onto it. It's like, what is going on? It's fleeting. That's what he's saying here. These things under heaven, if you look at life under the heavens, under the sun, you're going to think, man, this is meaningless, vanity, pointless, absurd, fleeting. In chapters 1 and 2 of Ecclesiastes, the author, he goes after the hard things of this world. He actually indulges himself in all that the world offers. And he says it's all meaningless. He goes after everything that the world could offer. And he says, meaninglessness of meaninglessnesses. But what he's pushing at here in chapter 3 is that there's actually more than what we see on this earth. There's more to this life than things that are under the sun. There's actually an over the sun kind of thing. There's an over the sun kind of living that we could have. There's something over the sun. There really is a heaven. There really is an eternity. So you have this famous poem, probably songs written about this poem. I read this poem and at a funeral for my grandfather. It's a famous poem. But I want you to understand something about this poem. This poem is a descriptive poem, not a prescriptive poem. Do you know what I mean by that? It's descriptive, not prescriptive. Well, have you ever, I'm a pretty good cook, okay? There's a couple things I really like to make. One is frozen pizza, really good at making that. And two, I really like making Kraft macaroni and cheese. Nobody else, okay? I thought I'd get a few yeah, let's go, Kraft macaroni and cheese. If you look at the back of the box, there's 2 lists on the back of that box, right? It's actually kind of on the side. You look at the box, and there's 2 lists. What are the 2 lists? You have a list of ingredients, and you have a list of instructions. Now, I follow the ingredient list and the instruction list like to a T. Abby, my wife, is just like, pour the milk, cut the butter, whatever it is that's going in. And somehow hers turns out better. I don't know how that works. But, I'm just going to follow it to a T. So you have 2 lists, an ingredients list and instructions list. I'm going to say here that this list here is not an instructions list. It's an ingredients list. This is what's going on in the world, he says. It's descriptive. Here's what's happening, not prescriptive, not saying this is what you should do. Now, people get this mixed up sometimes, and they can see how people might do that, and say a time to love, a time to hate. Yeah, I should hate people and love people at the same time. No, it's not that. He's actually saying this is what happens in this life. Here are the ingredients of your life. He's making observation of what's happening in the world. He's saying, look, this is how the world works. He's not sensationalizing his experience. He's not seeing everything with rose-colored glasses. He's giving a description of how the world works, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bleak. So these are true statements about the world, but they're not to be taken as license to do whatever you feel like in the moment. Like, man, if someone annoys me, I guess I'll just cut them off from my life rather than healing the relationship, Sometimes you just got to stitch things back together, but sometimes you just need to tear things apart. I don't know about that. Don't use this verse for that. I hear these verses taken as an instruction sometimes and not as an ingredient list. But if you take these as license to do as you please, then what happens? You actually become the one making the decisions rather than God on what to do and when to do it. But that's exactly the opposite of what Ecclesiastes is doing. Instead, what is Ecclesiastes doing? He's making observations, and he's saying that God is in control of these things. Look down at verse 10 with me. He says, I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in man's heart, yet so that he cannot find what God has done from the beginning to the end. Isn't that interesting? Look at verse 10. So you have 10, this observation statement. Then verse 12, look at this, verse 12. I perceived, look at verse 14, I perceived. He's seeing things in the world. The teacher is describing things that he's seen in the world. He's giving observations about how the world works. So take a look at these ingredients of life, and look what he's doing here. Look at verse 2. I'm not going to go through all these, so don't worry. He says, a time to be born, a time to die. He starts with the entire life cycle. You see, this even is not in our control. We don't get to decide when we are born. Due dates are never right, in case you're wondering. And generally speaking, we don't decide when we die. He's Starts off with a hard one, doesn't he? This is heavy for us. I don't have any special knowledge from Josh or anything, but I wonder if some of you here today are remembering the death of a parent, or perhaps the death of a child, or the death of a close friend, and it cuts deep, doesn't it? And you're thinking, what was the point of that? And Ecclesiastes is saying, yeah, this is a frustrating fact of life. It's difficult. God has appointed a time to be born and a time to die. He's going to come back to this, and he says that believing this truth will actually cause you to stand in awe of God, that God is in control of all things. You're going to stand in awe of God when there's a time for being born and a time for death. He then turns to agricultural pictures. You plant and you pluck. Over and over. You plant, you pluck, you plant, you pluck. Verse 3, imagine a farmer who binds up the wounds of his sheep, knowing that in a few months the same animal will be slaughtered for food. It seems odd on the surface of it, but it's a fact of life. Verse 4, you're going to weep in life, and you're also going to laugh. You're going to mourn, but you're also going to dance. Now, I want you to notice something. We'll pause here as you think about this list. Notice something. When you first start reading these things, they're in couplets together that kind of match. You notice that? Time to be born, time to die, time to plant, time to pluck up what is planted. They kind of fit together as little couplets. You might think, okay, start from the top. The first one of the couplet is the good one. The second one is the bad one. Poetry is parallel, and there's beauty in the consistency of a poem, in the parallelism. But that's not what is happening here, is it? He's not saying the first one is good and the second one is bad. And I think he's doing this. He's doing an incredible thing here. Each line seems to have a positive and a negative in it, but he keeps mixing up the order of the ones we would normally think as good and normally think as bad. And the reason I think he mixes it up, the ones that we normally think are good, normally think are bad, so that we would not think, oh, this is the good one, this is the bad one. He's mixing it up to flatten it out a little bit. He's trying, so is he trying to make us wonder if some of these are good and some of them are bad? No, he's telling us that these are the cold, hard facts of life. He's saying, yes, there are good parts in life and there are bad parts in life, and these are all ingredients of your life. Sure, it's good to laugh and dance. That's easy to see. But how many of you have been to a funeral and you've wept your eyes out? But you saw the good in the mourning and the weeping. Oh, it's hard. And oh, it's amazing what God uses to capture our attention, to remind us of eternity. We can keep going and see that sometimes we embrace and sometimes we can't embrace someone. Sometimes we seek for things, sometimes we lose things. Sometimes we keep things, sometimes we throw things away. Sometimes things get tore up and sometimes they get stitched back together. Sometimes we're quiet and sometimes we speak up. Remember, these are ingredients of our lives. He's not saying go out and find someone to hate or go out and find someone to go to war with. He's saying that this is a natural part of life under the sun. So what do we do with this list? What was the point of that? Well, that's exactly what he asks in verse 9. Look at verse 9. What gain has the worker from his toil? This is not a financial question. What's the financial benefit of his toil? No, he's saying, what's the point? On the surface, remember I said, it looks like you have these 14 positive things and you have these 14 negative things. And 14 pluses added up to 14 minuses, subtracted, I guess, equals out to nothing. This is an immediate nuisance to people, especially those who like to be in control and figure it all out. And in verse 10, what I read earlier, it says that God is in control. These times are from God. I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. That's creation language. But the sense of that phrase is more like he has made everything suitable in its time. God has set the appropriate time for everything. He created this thing. I heard one pastor say it this way. He created this thing. He knows how it works. Wouldn't you trust him? I'm in the throes of teaching a parenting class right now. We have 99 adult members in our church, and so if anybody wants to round that up for us, that'd be great. But we probably have 99 kids in our church too. We have a lot of kids in our church, and so I started this parenting class recently, and I want you to picture this though. It's kind of an easy truth. Parents have been around this thing a little bit longer than kids, so we should be in charge of our kids, of our homes. We should tell them what to do and not to do, especially when they're really young. And we should teach our children to trust us. I mean, that's a small picture between me and like a 3-year-old, right? Actually, running in the road is not a good idea. And so we're just not going to do that. And I'm going to help you, obey when I say stop. And not only when I get angry. And it's that picture between me and a 3-year-old, what about the picture between me and God? What if he's doing things that you don't quite understand? It's like we're doing things for our children that they don't quite understand. I can't play by the stairs. Help me understand this. And you're like, danger. And they're like, what's that? And here we are thinking, God, we actually have this under control. We kind of know what to do. And God's like, what if I'm doing something that you can't quite understand? And it's frustrating. Ecclesiastes is saying this is frustrating. This is hard. He's saying, you see that in verse 11? He has made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart. Here it is. Yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. You don't know what he's doing. You don't really know what he's up to. We like to be in control. We like to here's why all the things that have happened. Here's the bad thing that happened in my life. And I need to know the exact the good reason why that bad thing happened in my life. What if you don't know? What if God doesn't give you the mercy, the grace to see here's the good that it's accomplishing in your life? What if you can't quite see it clearly? But what if he's up to something greater than you could ever imagine in your life? You see, without God, eternity, life becomes a frustration. We are actually made for eternity, made for a relationship with him. So it should not surprise us when we're frustrated in life without him. God has put eternity into your heart. We long for something more, and it's right in front of you. And that sentiment, that longing for something more, that knowing that there's some kind of transcendence is the reason why Arthur Stace, his one-word message was so profound and so popular. For 25 years, it was unknown who was doing this. And then there it is in the year 2000 for the world to see. Maybe you're here and you're thinking, yeah, I do feel something in my heart and that there must be something more. But I want God to make it more obvious. Why won't God just show himself to me in a more obvious way? Well, God did show up one time in an incredible way. It's called the incarnation, the coming of Jesus. And get this, he came, and what happened? When God showed up, he took on flesh. God came, Jesus came. What happened? Everyone turned on him. And you think, man, if God would just show himself right here to my face, then I would follow him. Would you? Would you? It happened once, and no one followed him to the cross. They crucified him. It's amazing. Jesus comes into Jerusalem in Luke chapter 19. Comes into Jerusalem, and they're singing, Hosanna, Hosanna. Praise this King who's coming in the name of the Lord. You know what Jesus does? He weeps over the city. They're praising, he's weeping. And you go to the end and you find out all this crowd has turned on him, yelling, crucify him, crucify him. So when you look at this life, you look at this list, you need to see that these are from God. God has given mankind a burdensome life. It's this burden of life and the difficulties and troubles and frustrations and sufferings that come in this life. All are from God. And you're thinking, man, I am so glad I came to church today. This burden on your back has weighed you down enough to make you realize there must be something more. There must be something else. There must be something else to this life. There must be something over the sun. This is wisdom. This is wise living on this earth. Like Pastor Josh says, wisdom is the skill of living in God's world under God's rule. And here it is. You might have been tempted to think, yeah, when things are good. Ecclesiastes is saying, no, it's all from God. You have a burden laid on your back by God. You have a restlessness in your life laid on you by God. And this is the point here. God sets the time. Secondly, God gets the glory. In sections 12 to 15, there are two I perceived sections that I mentioned earlier in verse 12 and verse 14. Not just about seeing with our eyes, but about understanding, coming to know something. He says, here's what I know. Here are my two conclusions in verses 12 through 15. Verses 12 to 13, take a look at these. Verses 12 to 13, he says this, I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. He says, enjoy the life that's right in front of you. Enjoy good things in this life as if they are a gift from God, because they are. Every single thing. Yes, chaos is all around, trouble is all around, frustration all around. So enjoy the simple parts of life that are sitting right in front of you. Release the idea of trying to figure it all out and trust God. Let go of the pursuit of trying to find something even more and more meaningful, more and more satisfying out there, and trust God. Enjoy the good gifts right in front of you. Like this. Here it is. Eat, drink, take pleasure in your work. I mean, have you seen these Europeans coming over and like enjoying air conditioning? I've been a World Cup fan for like 2 weeks now, and it's awesome and it's hilarious. But what if we like took pleasure in the little things in life? And in Ecclesiastes, this comes up over and over, because what is he doing? Take pleasure in like eating and drinking and working. Take pleasure in those things, and it's going to have an effect on everything. Take pleasure in the small things, and it will have an effect on the big things in life. It's going to radically change you. The next observation, he says in verses 14 to 15, that God has done all of these things. I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it so that people would fear him. God is the one in control of all these things. God is orchestrating the events of life. God is the one who gives the times for everything, good and bad. God is the one who seeks what we would normally want to drive away. That's what I think he's doing in verse 15. God is the one who gives. God is the one who takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Do you believe that? And that is the purpose. Do you see that in there? That look at verse 14. God has done it. Why? So that people would fear before him. That fear is not a dread or a running away. That fear is worship. You see, God sets the times, and God gets the worship. God gets the glory. Ecclesiastes says to us, yes, there are real burdens in this life. There are hard truths that you'll learn about this world. You will face difficulty in this life, and all these are from God. Because God is the burden maker. We're sometimes afraid to admit this, as if we're putting the burden on God. But here's what's amazing. When you grasp this truth, of God the burden maker, your life will be transformed. Your life will be flipped upside down. Your life will be totally refocused. You have a burden laid on you by God. You have a restlessness in your life laid on you by God, so that when you face up to this truth, that it is all from God, when you trust in the sovereignty of God over everything, He, the burden maker, will become to you the burden taker. He will. He lifts the burden off your shoulders when you come face to face with this truth. If I think the burden is just random life events, I have anxiety. If I think my burden is caused by just fate, then I'm in despair. If I think my burden is merely a work of Satan, then I live in fear. But if I know that this burden was measured out by my God, then I know it has purpose, limits, and love behind it all. The burden no longer tells me that God is against me. It tells me that God is pursuing me. Abby and I faced difficulty somewhat recently. And we decided that we're not going to run from the truth of God's sovereignty over everything. We ran towards that truth. And the burden maker became to us the burden taker. The burden doesn't become lighter because you've discovered some secret technique in dealing with anxiety. It becomes lighter because you've discovered whose hand has put it there. It's not outside of His reign. It's not outside of His purpose. It's not outside of His love for you and His desire for your good. Run to this truth. Find your joy in this truth. Find rest in His rule and reign. And today, as Pastor Virginia Beach would say, rest your head on the pillow of God's sovereignty. This is wisdom. This is wise living, the skill of living in God's world under God's rule. Well, Gospel Fellowship, I don't want you to just hear an Old Testament message. I want you to hear a Christian message. This side of the cross. What about Christ? How does this point to Christ? This is most clearly seen in the work of Christ on the cross. The most devastating, unjust, terrible day in history. He did not deserve this punishment. And even this was God's will. Jesus slain before the foundation of the world. It was God's plan. The Father placed the burden onto His Son so that He might become to us the burden taker. Receive this gift of eternity by placing your trust in His life-giving death on the cross. That's the greatest burden we face, the burden of our sin. Maybe you came into this morning and you're thinking, I'm not really going through much difficulty in my life. Let's look at this list in Ecclesiastes. That's not what I'm struggling with. I'm struggling with the fact of my sin. Maybe you're saying the burden of sin that I've placed upon myself is my biggest struggle. Surely you might say, God would never accept me. But hear the good news. God has taken that burden that you can't bear on your own, and He has placed it on His Son at the cross, so that when you place your trust in Him, He becomes to you the burden taker. You can't bear this burden. You were not created to bear the burden of your own sin or the burden of your own righteousness. You can't bear the burden of trying to outweigh your bad works by doing more and more good works. You can't bear it. So Christ went to the cross to bear the burden so that He might take the burden. Live in light of eternity. Live under God's sovereign rule. Let's pray. Lord, we're so grateful for your work in our lives. Lord, there's so many things that are swirling around us in this life that we don't understand, that we can't understand, but we do understand that they are not outside of your sovereign control. And so we trust you. Help us to live wisely in your world under your good rule, even when that rule doesn't feel good, doesn't seem good from our perspective, but may we trust that you're working all things for our good and for your glory. So Lord, we want you to be honored in every corner of our lives. No matter what's happening, help us to trust you and live for you. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.